What if tonight, the night you almost gave up, is actually the night everything begins? I'm not here to give you cliches. I'm here to remind you of something your soul already knows, that God has been watching, working, and weaving, even in the silence. If you've ever felt unseen, delayed, forgotten by heaven, then don't scroll away, because what you're about to hear might be the confirmation you've been aching for. Stay with me. This is not just another message. This is a divine moment, and it has your name on it. Tonight is not like every other night. Something is breaking open in the atmosphere, quietly, invisibly, but unmistakably. You may not hear thunder or see lightning. There may be no sign on the news, no text from a friend, no sudden shift in your surroundings. But something has shifted. Heaven has declared it. And whether your soul can grasp it right now or not, what has been promised is no longer pending. It is happening tonight. You've been walking with weight, haven't you? Carrying burdens no one else sees, smiling in daylight but unraveling after midnight. Nights of whispered prayers that felt like they faded into silence. Mornings where you questioned whether another day would even make a difference. You've waited, you've wrestled, you've wondered. And somewhere deep inside, you've asked the question most people are afraid to voice. God, did you forget me? But tonight, something is being settled. This is not just a poetic thought or another spiritual platitude to soothe your disappointment. No, this is a divine decree, a threshold moment. Heaven has set something in motion that cannot be reversed, and it has your name written on it. This moment is different because God says so, not because you earned it, not because you finally figured everything out, not because the stars aligned. It's different because something spiritual has reached its fullness, and the command has gone out. Release it, unleash it, let it happen, tonight. You are not listening to this by accident. You didn't stumble onto this message at random. You are part of a story that is unfolding in divine timing, with divine pacing by a God who has never once blinked during your pain. He has watched the slow crawl of your faith through heavy fog. He has measured the depth of your sighs when words failed, and he has remained unmoving, unwavering, and unshaken by your doubt. Because the truth is, it wasn't you holding on to him, it was him holding you. And now something inside you stirs. You feel the tremble, the tension, the question, could this finally be the turn? Could what I've hoped for, what I barely dared to pray for, actually come to life? God's answer isn't in a whisper anymore. It's not hidden in parables or metaphors. Tonight, he says it plain. Yes, but here's the tension. It doesn't always look like we imagined. The shift rarely announces itself with fanfare. It's often subtle, like the first crack of sunrise after a long night. And if you aren't tuned in, you might mistake it for ordinary. You might dismiss the most pivotal moment in your life as just another Tuesday night. That's why he's speaking so directly now. This is your warning and your welcome. Pay attention. Be sensitive. Tonight is not for sleeping through. It's for stepping into. What you thought was still far off is arriving. What you assumed would come someday is here, tonight. The spiritual climate has changed. God has waited until now to say it clearly, because now is when your soul is ready to hear it. All the detours, delays, disappointments, they didn't cancel your destiny. They prepared you for it. You're not behind. You're right on time. Now, hear this with your spirit. Movement begins tonight. This movement may begin quietly. It might come as a phone call, an email, a moment of clarity. It could be a deep peace that finally settles, or an unexpected opportunity you never imagined. But it will come, because God is not vague. He's specific. He's precise. And when he says now, he means it. So why tonight? Why this moment? Because something has ripened in the invisible. Prayers you forgot you prayed have reached their full weight. Seeds sown in tears are bursting through the soil. Alignments that once seemed impossible are now undeniable. Tonight marks the tipping point. This is the night where something shifts. not just in your circumstances, but in your mind, in how you carry yourself, in what you believe about what's possible. You've lived under the story of waiting, but tonight you cross over into the story of becoming. You will no longer beg for what is already yours. God is saying, I am not teasing you with hope. I am not dangling promises just out of reach. I am delivering. I am moving. I am answering. You will see it, not someday, but now. It happens tonight. If that stirs fear in you, good. That means you're standing at the edge of something bigger than yourself. That means you're stepping into faith, not comfort. But don't let fear talk you out of what faith is already prepared to walk into. Let me speak to the one who's tired of believing, who's prayed until the words felt numb, who's done all the right things and still ended up in the dark. God sees you, and he hasn't missed one moment of your endurance. You were never invisible to him. You were being strengthened in the hidden place, forged in fire for a time such as this. You didn't miss your moment. It was still forming. And now it's here. This is not the end of your story. It's the end of the silence, the end of the wandering, the end of feeling like you're chasing wind. What's about to unfold will make sense of the shadows. What's about to arrive will redeem every tear. But here's what you must understand. You still have a choice. Tonight may be the night God moves. But will you? Will you respond, or will you retreat? Will you step through the door that's opening, or sit frozen in the comfort of what's familiar? Will you speak when God prompts, act when he leads, believe even when you don't yet see? The moment is divine, but your movement activates it. It's time to shake off the apathy, time to silence the inner critic, time to stop waiting for someone to confirm what God already declared. You are the confirmation. Your peace is the confirmation. Your deep knowing, the one you've tried to explain but can't, is the confirmation. Don't ask for another sign when he's already shown you the doorway. Walk through it. Say yes. Let tonight be the night your faith shows up in action. Because the truth is, the next chapter doesn't start when the clock strikes 12. It starts when you do. God is not interested in simply blessing you. He's preparing to trust you with influence, with favor, with visibility, with deeper encounters of his voice. And what you build from this moment on won't be built on pressure, but on promise. You don't need to hustle for what's already been handed to you, but you do need to carry it with boldness. So let's strip it down. Everything that felt broken, delayed, useless, it was part of the blueprint. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. The places you begged to enter but God shut, they were traps. The silence, it was training. The stretch, it was structure. Tonight, the page turns, and I know you're thinking, but what if I'm wrong? Let me ask you this. What if you're right? What if this is the moment everything pivots? What if your obedience tonight becomes someone else's miracle tomorrow? God doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs your yes. Not someday, not when you feel more qualified, not when you feel less afraid. Now, because the shift is already happening. It's not waiting on your perfection. It's waiting on your participation. Take the step. Make the call. Start the prayer. Say the words. Launch the idea. Move your feet in the direction of your destiny. God doesn't light the whole path. He lights the next step. But tonight, the light is on. It's shining. You can't unsee it now, so what will you do? Heaven is leaning in. The angels are watching. The story is turning. The silence is ending. And the divine shift, the one your soul has been aching for, begins now. It happens tonight. When something shifts in your life unexpectedly, how do you usually respond? A. I overthink and hesitate, unsure if it's really God. B. I take a step forward in faith, even if I feel nervous. Comment below A or B and share why. Let's talk. The quiet seasons can be the most brutal, not because of what happens in them, but because of what doesn't. No voice, no shift, no clarity, no answer, and yet it's in that stillness where the deepest parts of you are shaped, where noise fades and reality stands bare, where your soul, wrestles not just with the absence of movement, but with the unsettling question, was any of this even worth it? You know the feeling. Waiting has a way of stripping you. At first, you wait with expectation, eyes wide, heart open. You journal, you fast, you pray with passion. But then the weeks turn into months. The soon turns into someday, and the weight of uncertainty begins to whisper doubts you never intended to entertain. Did I hear God wrong? Maybe I misunderstood the promise. Maybe I made the whole thing up in my head. And yet, something inside you kept choosing to believe. To stay when walking away would have been easier. You kept waking up to another morning, though your prayers felt unanswered. You kept offering kindness, even when your own heart felt hollow. You stayed. What you didn't realize, what you couldn't realize in the middle of it, is that the wait was never wasted. Every second had weight. Every silence held strategy. Every stretch of unknown was part of something sacred. Let's go back for a moment. Do you remember the first time you felt called? The first whisper that told you your life had deeper meaning? Maybe you were a teenager in a small church in South Carolina. Maybe you were in a quiet moment alone in your kitchen in Kansas, or on a late-night drive through the desert roads of Nevada. Wherever it was, something touched you, marked you. A moment of clarity so real you couldn't deny it. That moment wasn't random. And everything since then, every detour, delay, disappointment, has been shaped to form the kind of soul that could carry the very promise you were given. God never wasted a second, even the nights that felt like exile, even the days that felt like defeat, even the seasons where you couldn't hear his voice and the heavens felt like stone. He was still working. He was still weaving. He was still watching you grow. Let me tell you about Michael. He's a man in his early 40s now, lives in a small town outside Nashville, a good man, a faithful man, but he knows waiting intimately. He spent years building a dream that didn't seem to go anywhere. Studio lights, empty shows, songs that no one heard. And every time he thought about quitting, he felt that nudge. Stay, trust, don't walk away yet. For 12 years, he felt stuck, invisible, passed over. But in year 13, it happened. A conversation in a coffee shop. A woman with no idea who he was sat beside him, heard him humming a tune, and asked about it. That one conversation led to an invitation. That invitation led to a platform. That platform led to lives changed. Now, Michael is leading worship in cities he used to dream about, and the very songs birthed in the silence are healing people he never imagined reaching. None of that would have happened if he had walked away in year 12. And what about you? What if the chapter you're in now is year 12? What if tonight is the cusp of your year 13? It's not about numbers, it's about faith. God never wastes the ones who wait with him. You thought you were being sidelined. You were actually being fortified, trained, set apart. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't wear the crown until years later. In between, he faced lions, giants, betrayal, and hiding in caves. Was the wait wasted? No, it was preparation. Joseph had a dream as a boy, but sat in pits and prisons before the palace. Was the wait wasted? No, it was shaping his humility, integrity, and discernment. Even Jesus himself waited 30 years before stepping into his public calling. He grew in wisdom and stature, quietly and steadily, in the carpenter's house. Was that wait wasted? Absolutely not. It was holy, and so is yours. The delay was never meant to punish you. It was building something in you that speed never could. You've learned to discern the voice of God, not through fireworks, but through whispers. You've developed endurance that can't be taught through ease. You've grown roots. That's what the waiting does. It grows things underneath. You may have looked at your life and thought, nothing's happening. But beneath the surface, your character was being anchored. Your identity was being clarified. Your dependence on God was being cemented. And none of that shows up on timelines or social media. But heaven sees it all. There's a kind of beauty that only waiting reveals. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's real. You became more than just a believer. You became a carrier, someone who doesn't just talk about promises, but someone who holds them, walks with them, bleeds for them, and refuses to let go, even when it hurts. Let me tell you this, God can trust people like that. He can build with people like that. And now that the waiting has done its work, now that your foundation is firm, He's ready to place something on it. You wouldn't have been ready 5 years ago. You might have fumbled it. The gift would have crushed you. The opportunity would have become an idol. But now, after all that has been stripped, healed, restored, you can carry it with steadiness. Because the weight didn't weaken you, it strengthened you. And maybe tonight, for the first time, you can feel it. That silent season didn't break you, it made you whole. So take this moment right now and look back. Rewind the reel of your journey, every tear you cried, every time you showed up when no one else did, every time you chose to believe when doubt made more sense. It all counted. God saw it. God wrote it down. God counted it as worship. The wait wasn't wasted, friend. It was recorded, and now the record is being released. You don't need to strive for what is already moving in your direction. You just need to recognize that you're not the same person who entered the waiting. You are stronger, wiser, deeper. You've been refined. And what's coming next won't require the old you to show up. It'll need the version of you that only the wait could produce. Tonight is not just a moment. It's a culmination. God didn't rush it. He took His time on purpose, because you matter that much. And now, the weight of that waiting is becoming the weight of glory. It's happening, and it was worth every second. There is a kind of silence that doesn't just feel empty. It feels erasing. You show up, do what's asked, give what you can. You're present in people's lives, even when they forget to ask how you're doing. And still, you wonder, does anyone actually see me? That question doesn't always shout. It usually whispers. It hides behind smiles, behind polite nods, and replies like, I'm fine even when you're not. And with time, if you're not careful, you begin to believe that being invisible is just part of life. But let me tell you a deeper truth, one that heaven has been declaring since the first breath you ever took. You were never invisible to God, not once. Not when you stayed up late folding laundry while your heart broke inside. Not when you drove through back roads outside your small Tennessee town, trying to cry quietly so your kids wouldn't hear you when you got home. Not when you attended the wedding alone again. Not when you gave that last $20 to a friend because you knew what it felt like to be in need. Heaven recorded it all. Every act of quiet obedience, every sacrifice no one applauded. Every day you got out of bed when your soul felt numb. You were seen, fully, clearly, tenderly. Michael, our brother who spent over a decade writing songs no one listened to, told me something the night before his first sold-out event in Nashville. It was past midnight. The venue was silent, and we stood on the balcony looking out over rows of empty seats. He turned to me and said, "You know what hits hardest right now? Not the platform, not the music. It's that He saw me all those nights when I thought I was forgotten. I'm standing here tonight, but this moment started in the dark." That's the kind of clarity that hits your bones, because you start to realize it wasn't just that God was watching. You begin to believe He cared. That the divine isn't distant and indifferent. He's present, attentive, responsive. And even when He doesn't speak out loud, He's still seeing. And that seeing carries weight. You might be thinking, but why didn't He show it sooner? Why didn't He rescue me from the moments that nearly broke me? It's a fair question. And if you've been through the kind of pain that hollows you out, you deserve an answer deeper than surface-level theology. So here it is. God wasn't withholding love. He was building in you a capacity to recognize it when it finally broke through the clouds. Because love that is always felt can become background noise, but love that returns after the silence, it reorients your soul. You begin to notice how often He actually was there. That night in the hospital hallway when the nurse said, "You're stronger than you think." That voicemail from your cousin who didn't even know what you were walking through, but said, "You've been on my mind." That random text from someone at church, offering to bring dinner just because. Those weren't coincidences, they were confirmations. Echoes from a God who never looked away, not for a single moment. And those quiet confirmations? They were signs pointing toward a bigger truth. God's recognition doesn't look like the world's. The world recognizes success, achievement, loud arrival. God recognizes endurance. He sees faithfulness in places no one else values. The mother who keeps showing up for her children, even though her own heart feels like it's unraveling. The man who gets up and goes to work at the job that barely covers the bills, not because he wants to, but because someone depends on him. The artist who paints, writes, sings, even though no one claps yet, because it's part of their soul to create. He sees them. He sees you, not just your actions, your motives, your sincerity, your resolve, even the parts of you that feel uncertain, awkward, or unfinished. He knows exactly what to do with that raw, messy truth. He is not embarrassed by your weakness. He is drawn to it because it gives him room to move. There's this woman, her name is Carla. She lives in North Carolina, not far from Asheville. For 5 years, she's been caring for her elderly mother full-time. She had to leave a promising job, say no to countless opportunities. Her social life shrank, her world got smaller, but her love grew deeper. She told me once, "Some days I don't feel like I exist outside this house. But at night, when everything is quiet and I'm sitting with my mom while she sleeps, I feel this strange peace, like someone is telling me, 'I see you, I know this matters.'" That someone is God. And tonight, he's not whispering that truth anymore. He's proclaiming it. You were seen all along, from the smallest acts of service to the battles you fought silently in your mind, from the moments you almost quit to the ones where you couldn't even speak, but you stayed anyway. You didn't know it then, but angels leaned in to watch. God never needed a stage to notice you. Your kitchen table was enough. Your daily commute was enough. Your half-hearted prayers whispered through tears were enough. He was there, not just standing beside you, but honoring you, valuing your yes when no one else heard it. And now the season is turning. You're going to start seeing public fruit from private faithfulness. People will notice a glow they can't explain. Doors will open without you having to knock. Favor will find you, not because you chased it, but because you carried integrity when it didn't seem to count. And yes, people might ask, where did that come from? And the truth will be, it came from the shadows, from the silence, from the slow, quiet hours when God saw me, and I chose to stay faithful anyway. So I ask you now, what if nothing you've walked through was ever random? What if every overlooked moment was actually recorded? What if you've been seen, known, and loved at a level far deeper than you ever imagined? You may not have the platform yet, the title, the applause, but you already have the approval that matters. Heaven applauds what earth ignores. And tonight, heaven is standing for you because you never stopped. You never gave up, even when quitting would have been easier. And now it's your turn, your moment, not to perform, but to walk in peace, to carry the calm confidence that comes from knowing you were seen all along. There are moments when life no longer asks you to knock, because the door swings open first. And when it does, something strange can happen. Instead of rushing in with joy, we hesitate. Instead of embracing what we've prayed for, we hold our breath. We second-guess our worthiness. We wonder, why now? Why me? But tonight, hear this with clarity. The doors opening in your life are not random. They are response. They are reward. They are the result of private yeses, silent endurance, and sacred alignment. And when they open, don't apologize. Step through. This isn't pride. This is partnership. This is the fulfillment of God's timing meeting your persistence. And heaven is not opening these doors for you to stand in front of them, wringing your hands with hesitation. Heaven expects you to walk through. Michael had this moment. It was 2 weeks after that worship night in Nashville. He was asked to write a theme song for a national ministry tour. He'd never been in a room like that before, surrounded by producers, creatives, people he once watched from a distance. And you know what he did? He almost declined. "Who am I to lead that?" he asked me on a call. "I'm just a small-town songwriter who barely believed in himself until last year." But then I reminded him that, no, you're not just anything. You're the one who didn't quit. You're the one who wrote in the dark, worshipped in the silence, kept moving forward when no one clapped. That makes you trustworthy. That makes you ready. And he stepped in. Nervous, yes, but obedient. And what came out of that collaboration ended up reaching hundreds of thousands of lives. The song became an anthem of revival for people in their own hidden seasons. That's what happens when you stop apologizing for your access and start owning your anointing. The same principle applies to you. God is opening doors now, not for your ego, but for your impact. But if you hesitate too long, you may confuse humility with fear. Humility is not shrinking. Humility is saying yes and pointing the glory upward. Fear says, "Who do I think I am?" Faith says, "I know who he says I am." And that is the posture you'll need now, because the next steps may come faster than you expected. You've waited. You've been faithful. And now the momentum begins. It won't always come with a formal announcement. Sometimes it's a DM that leads to a divine connection. Sometimes it's a casual conversation at your kid's soccer game that uncovers a door you never imagined. Carla knows this well. She had just returned from the grocery store one afternoon in Asheville, still in her sweats, hair undone, when a neighbor, who also happened to be a retired nurse, came by to borrow sugar. It turned into an hour-long porch conversation. That nurse was starting a local support group for family caregivers and needed a co-leader. "I thought of you the moment I began planning this," she said. Carla stood there stunned. She had spent five years feeling invisible. And now, a door, gentle, subtle, but real, was swinging open. She almost said no. She almost made herself small again. But she didn't. She said yes. And today, that support group has helped dozens of families feel seen and less alone. Carla, who once questioned if she even existed outside her mother's care, now stands as a voice of wisdom and compassion in her neighborhood. That's what happens when you walk through divine doors without apologizing. So what does it look like to step through boldly? First, it means letting go of the version of yourself that only knew how to survive. You're not in survival anymore. The wilderness built you, but the wilderness is not your permanent home. You're stepping into promise now. It's okay to trust the new. Second, it means saying yes before you feel fully ready. You won't always feel qualified, but God never asked for perfection. He asked for obedience. The ready comes while walking, not while waiting. Third, it means understanding that your authority is spiritual, not situational. Your confidence doesn't come from being the loudest in the room. It comes from knowing who sent you. You don't need to force your way forward. You walk with peace and let your presence speak. Fourth, it means knowing when to release what is no longer yours. Some doors open while others close. Some friendships shift. Some routines get rearranged. That's not failure, it's focus. Don't mourn what God is pruning to make space for what's next. And finally, it means celebrating without guilt. Favor doesn't mean you're better. It means you've been chosen for a role in this chapter of someone else's breakthrough. Walk in it with joy, with reverence, with full attention, because here's what's coming. The things that once stalled will begin to glide. Resources will align. Collaborations will feel natural. Dreams once shelved will rise with new urgency. God's not adding pressure, He's adding power, but power requires stewardship. This is why your private season mattered, because now as the doors swing wide, you won't treat them like lottery tickets. You'll treat them like assignments. You'll protect your peace. You'll guard your time. You'll say no with grace. You'll say yes with courage. You'll speak less and listen more. You'll discern what looks good from what is God. And here's the beautiful twist. You'll find joy in the obedience, not just the outcome. You'll discover that the real reward isn't the room you walk into. It's who you become while walking through. So let me ask you directly, will you step through? Will you stop shrinking when it's your time to shine? Will you let go of false humility and walk in quiet confidence? This is the moment you've been praying for, not because it looks like a dream, but because it aligns with your calling. You don't need to shout your arrival. You just need to show up with peace, because the door isn't waiting to be knocked on. It's already open. Walk through. There is a moment when the waiting ends, the door opens, and your feet finally step onto the ground you once only dreamed about. And in that moment, when everything begins to move, your mind might whisper, "Is this really happening?" But it is. This is not a preview. This is not a rehearsal. This is not a spiritual teaser for something that's still decades away. This is fulfillment. And it begins now. The truth is, you're not stepping into something new. You're stepping into something prepared. What once lived only in vision and hope has now taken on flesh. And not just because the world changed. You changed. What you've become in the hidden places has caught up with what God planned from the very beginning. Michael said something powerful after performing at his third sold-out event in Atlanta. He stood backstage holding his guitar, still breathing heavy from worship, and whispered, "I don't feel like I'm finally becoming something. I feel like I'm becoming someone, the person I was born to be." That's it. The becoming isn't about roles or titles or results. It's about identity aligning with destiny. It's about stepping into the skin of your purpose and realizing that the hardest parts of your journey weren't detours, they were mirrors, showing you what was always inside. You are not just walking into new opportunities, you are walking into a new awareness of what you carry, of who you are, of how God sees you, trusts you, and wants to move through you. Becoming is not about striving. It's not about performance. It's not about showing up polished. It's about bringing your real, honest, resilient self to the table and realizing this version of you, the one who stayed, who grew, who endured, is exactly who God had in mind. That's why it took so long. Not because he was punishing you, but because he was forming something holy, something weighty, something sustainable. You weren't being prepared for just a moment. You were being shaped for a mission. And now it begins. In Asheville, Carla has become a pillar of stability for caregivers across the city. The local hospital asked her to create a quarterly support series, and recently she was asked to speak at a statewide health conference. When she received the invitation, she froze. "I'm not a speaker," she said. "I'm not qualified." But deep inside, she knew. That voice, the one she'd learned to trust in the silent years, was speaking again. You're not being invited because you're perfect. You're being trusted because you're faithful. So she said yes. And in that yes, something unlocked. Because this is what becoming looks like. Saying yes to things that scare you, but match your calling. Saying yes to things you once thought were meant for someone else. Saying yes when you used to hide. You're not waiting anymore. You're becoming. Let that truth soak in. Becoming is your birthright. It is not based on merit. It is based on relationship. God isn't launching your promise because you've earned it, but because you've surrendered to it. You've let him dig deep, refine, restore, and reveal. Now he wants to build, and you will build differently than before. No longer from striving, but from peace. No longer chasing approval, but anchored in identity. No longer running to prove you're enough, but walking because you know you already are. You'll sense God's rhythm more clearly now, not like crashing waves, but like steady tide. You won't need a spotlight to know you matter. You won't need applause to know you're effective. You'll speak, move, create, love, and lead from the quiet well inside that was dug during your wilderness. And others will notice. Not because you're loud, but because you're settled. Not because you're flashy, but because you're anchored. Your peace will invite collaboration. Your confidence will calm storms in others. Your steadiness will stir awakening in quiet places. This is how influence was always meant to look, not as noise, not as popularity, but as presence. You become the person who doesn't just speak truth, you carry it, you radiate it, you embody hope simply by existing in the room. And for those who wonder if they missed it, if life took too many turns, if the dream was delayed too long, if the calling expired, this is your answer. Nothing has been wasted. Not your mistakes, not your detours, not your doubts. They were part of the shaping. Even the seasons you labeled as failure were full of seeds. And now those seeds are sprouting. So what does this look like practically? It looks like walking into rooms you used to feel too small for and feeling peace instead of panic. It looks like sharing your story not to impress, but to invite healing. It looks like finally forgiving yourself for what you didn't know back then and realizing you were always in progress, never disqualified. It looks like building rhythms that don't burn you out. Prayer in the morning, stillness in the afternoon, joy in the ordinary moments that used to rush past unnoticed. It looks like giving what you carry to others, not with pressure but with purpose. You've spent years learning to hear God for yourself. Now you'll help others learn the same. You've spent years believing in the dark. Now you'll help others believe in the light. This isn't about becoming someone else's hero. It's about becoming a mirror, a reflection of grace, of growth, of resilience. You will become the evidence that God doesn't forget. That delay is not denial. That staying faithful even in obscurity is not wasted. You will become the reminder, the living promise, the answered prayer. And here's the final invitation. Don't try to capture it all at once. Becoming is not a flash, it's a flow. It happens step by step, conversation by conversation, act of trust by act of trust. All you need to do is stay available and stay anchored. There will be days where you feel like retreating, when old insecurities knock on the door, when you're tempted to shrink again. But this time, you'll remember, I'm not who I was. This time, you'll stand up straighter, you'll speak clearer, you'll respond from overflow, not exhaustion. This time, you'll say, yes, Lord, I am ready, because you are. You're ready to carry, to create, to speak, to bless, to lead, not from a platform, but from presence. The weight you once carried has become the wisdom you now offer. You've become someone who doesn't just hear the promise, you live it. This is the becoming, and it starts now. What part of your becoming do you now see with new clarity? A. I'm stronger than I thought because I stayed when I could have quit. B. I'm ready now because I finally trust who I've become. Comment A or B below and speak your becoming into the open. If something in this message stirred something in you, if your spirit whispered, "This was for me," then don't let it end here. You've just stepped into a holy moment, a divine reminder that your story isn't finished, your waiting wasn't wasted, and your becoming has already begun. So take a breath, take courage, and take this with you into the world. Because someone you know is still in the middle of their silence, still wondering if they've been seen, still waiting for their door to open. Be the echo that calls them forward. Be the bridge between their weary and their awakening. Share this message, not for numbers, not for clicks, but because hope multiplies when it's passed on. And before you scroll away, pause for just a moment and drop your answer to today's question in the comments. Let's build a space where faith meets honesty, where stories rise, where hearts heal. Your voice matters, your journey matters, and this community, we rise together. Share, comment, speak, because tonight something shifted and we're not going back.